Okay, so I want to make an array of movies. Let's make an array of movie titles. So, as we learned yesterday, an array is a collection of data or a list of data that contains a sequence of data of the same type. So, what type of data do you think an array of movie titles would be? String, okay. So capital S string. Now, that'll indicate it's a single string. The way that I indicate I'm doing an array of strings is what do I put after the G? Square brackets, very good. Then I have to give a name to my array. Say it again? Movies. I like movies. Here's the deal. I see you guys don't. I haven't pulled the curtain back all the way. We're going to do the movie titles, and then we're going to look at either their Rotten Tomatoes score or their IMDb score. So maybe I'll call this one movie titles, and then the other one we can call it movie scores or ratings or something like that. All was not revealed to you folks. Then I put an equal sign, and there's a couple different ways that we looked at to create arrays yesterday. We're going to come back to this number 1 in a minute. I want to do this number 2, this initializer list format where you know exactly what's going to go inside of it. And so you just put the stuff inside of it using those curly braces. So I'm going to put curly braces here. And let's get 5 movies. Jaws. Say what? Jaws is a good one. I agree. We don't have to go all Steven Spielberg, Ryan. Spaceballs. That's a good. What is that? Mel Brooks, right? A little Star Wars parody. That's a good one. All one word, right? Pulp Fiction. That's a good. That's an all-time slapper. Oh, Monty Python. Are we going Holy Grail or Life of Brian?
Holy Grail.
Okay. Monty Python. Okay, it's a little long title. Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Who just died recently? Was that Terry Jones? Okay. One of the Pythons died. Okay, and then that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we got. Hold on. Let's see what we got. We got Jaws is kind of a thriller. Spaceballs, comedy. Pulp Fiction, action, thriller, comedy. All of it. Monty Python and the Holy Grail, comedy. Can we get some more representation, like a horror movie or romance or a... The Notebook. Okay, perfect. The Notebook. Now I've never seen it, but isn't that the one that's like if you're a bird, I'm a bird? Is that the Notebook? No, it's not the Notebook. Okay. Darn. Oh well. Still haven't seen it. Dang. Okay, let me zoom out so I can get this whole thing in here. Common mistake when making an array of strings is forgetting to put the quotation marks around each individual element. Some people accidentally put like one set of quotation marks all the way over here and then one set of quotation marks all the way over here. You know what you did? You made a list of one thing in that case. You got to put the quotation marks around each element and then commas in between them. So you'll see that I've got commas in between each individual element here. You'll notice the comma is black because it's outside of the quotation marks. Now my code won't actually do anything, but it did make an array of movie titles. You don't have to believe me, but I can show you if you want to see really quick here. So yeah, movie titles. I can make it a little bit big. Oh, can I make it bigger? There you go. That's kind of what our array looks like right now. So there you go. Jaws, Spaceball. The 0th element's Jaws. The 1th element's Spaceballs. The 2th element's Pulp Fiction. The 3rd element's Monty Python and the Holy Grail. And the 4th element is the Notebook. Looks good. Okay, let me get rid of this debug. Get me out of here. Okay, save me. Help. All right. Now, like I said, we are going to look at the other way to make an array. Let's make an array of those oh boy, this sentence has issues. Let's make an array of those movies. What should I call it? Ratings? Ratings. Okay, somebody help me fix this sentence. I know, you can hit me with you need an apostrophe S. I'm not talking about that. Is this okay? Okay? Okay. Okay, it's okay. Okay. All right. So I think there's two main, well, actually there's a couple main ways that you can find the rating of a movie. You could go on There's a couple different websites. There's like IMDb, which is the Internet Movie Database, and they have ratings. I think those ratings are usually by like users though, so those are okay. Then there's like Rotten Tomatoes. You guys ever heard of Rotten Tomatoes? Okay, Rotten Tomatoes basically gives you, it takes every critical review, and if it's positive, it's like 1. If it's a negative review, it's 0, and it gives you the percentage of positive reviews essentially. So like, let's see here, new opening this week. I haven't heard of any of these. Sonic the Hedgehog has 63% positive rating. Birds of Prey has 78%. 1917, 89%. Parasite has a 99%. Doolittle, unsurprisingly, has 14%. So then I think the ones below like 50% are like splat. They're not good. So we could do Rotten Tomatoes, or there's like, I think there's Metacritic as well. Metacritic kind of does an average. It gives everybody an average rating. But I'm not sure how far back Metacritic goes. But those are kind of the main ones. Is there a preference that you have between those? Do people mostly use Rotten Tomatoes? Okay. Now, Rotten Tomatoes, look at the scores there. Those look like integers to me. Do they look like integers to you? Okay, so let's make an integer array. Let's call this movie rankings. No, movie ratings. Excuse me. Now, let's make this array, let's say that we know the size and type. We know it's going to be an integer array, and we know it's going to have 5 ratings because there's been 5 movies, but let's say we don't know the ratings off the top of our head, and we're going to fill them back in later. So I'm going to use kind of number 1 from our note sheet yesterday, where we know the size and type. You say the type, square brackets, the array name, done. And then you say equals new type and the number of elements. Equals new type and the number of elements. Well, since we had 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 movies up here, I'm going to do 5 movies in here. Let me zoom in a little bit. There we go. Or 5 elements, I should say. And yes, I could use list format again, but that's kind of boring. We just did a list format one the other time. So I want to show you the other way. Now, something a little bit new that you looked at with Daniel a little bit last night. We talked about a little bit on the note sheet. If you're wondering who Daniel is, he is the guy in the videos. It's not like some random guy I expected you to hang out with. Daniel's the man in the videos from last night. If you're watching the video with Daniel, or maybe you were looking ahead in the lesson, why don't you go ahead and flip over the note sheet for a minute. We are going to be looking at individual elements today. So if you create an array, how can you actually do stuff with the individual elements? Well, essentially to access an individual element in an array, you can do the following. To get an individual element, basically a single spot in an array, you say the array name, whatever it is, and then square brackets, the index number. And that whole thing behaves just like any other variable. You can put an equal sign after it. You can do plus plus after it if it's an integer or a double or something like that. You could print out an individual element. There's a lot of different stuff that you can do. But essentially, the idea is this thing right here can be treated like any other variable. So if you were to take a single variable and change it, you'd say variable equals something. Now you can say array name sub index number equals something. Yesterday we learned about index numbers for arrays. What do they start at? 0. And the last index number in an array is the length minus 1. So if we have 5 elements in an array, the indices go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I could say array name sub 0, array name sub 1, array name sub 2, etc., etc. And that's how I access an individual element. So what can you do? Well, here's some ideas down here. If you wanted to take an element of an array named A and set some other variable equal to it, you could do something like that. Notice that A sub 0 is acting just like any other variable. You could print out an element of an array, saying something like system.out.print A sub 2. That would print out the second, well, technically the third element at index 2 in some array. You can also set values by index, just like you would with any other variable. You can say the name of the array sub some index and then set it equal to something. And that's what we're going to do right now. So back in our code here, let's go ahead and set all of these different elements to something. So the 0th element in my movie ratings array, I want it to correspond to the rating of Jaws. Oh, here's a fun game. Try to predict what you think the Rotten Tomatoes score of Jaws is going to be in your head. Okay, let's see here. Rotten Tomatoes, no peeking, no cheating. Now, Jaws, if you don't know, it's the movie that's like da-da, da-da, where people were afraid to go into the water. All right, Roy Scheider, yes, that's it. Wow, 98%. Who is the critic that gave Jaws a negative review? That's probably embarrassing for them, right? So I'm going to say Jaws is a 98. All right, Ryan, Spaceballs, what are we thinking for Rotten Tomatoes here? 65. Yeah, there's some parts that are a little, I hear you. But it is funny. It's good, Mel Brooks. You're pretty close. You're pretty close. Now, I like this movie. I like this movie a lot. I think this is an unfair score here. But see, the audience always knows. The audience always knows. But 59 for Spaceballs. Just under that fresh rating there. Let's see, movie rating sub 2. If you don't know what I'm doing, I'm trying to make the 0th element of movie titles correspond to the 0th element of movie ratings. I'm trying to make the 1th element of movie titles correspond to the 1th element of movie ratings, and so on and so on. Who said Pulp Fiction? What are you thinking for Pulp Fiction? Yeah, 98. Yeah, it's pretty solid all around, huh? Let's see, Pulp Fiction, 92. A little bit lower than I thought it was good. I mean, how do you not like Pulp Fiction? I don't know. 92. Let's see here. Monty Python and the Holy Grail. What are we thinking, Jason?
98.
98. Okay, let's see here. Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Monty Python and the Holy Grail. 97%. Lower audience score. Shocking. You guys know Python, the programming language, is named after Monty Python? True story. And what's the Notebook? Cordelia, what are you thinking for a rating on the Notebook? Okay, I'm going to guess a 71. I haven't, and now keep in mind I haven't seen it. Ooh! But the audience always knows, Cordelia, and there's been 31 million audience reviews, so the audience always knows there. It's hard not to admire its unabashed sentimentality, but the Notebook is too clumsily, oh, ouch, hurtful words, never more spake. Okay. All right. So there's another way that you can go ahead and fill in an array, something like that we've just seen right there. So you can go ahead and change individual elements like we did just here, or you can go ahead and just list them all in one format. Is one way better than the other? No. I would say that you'd probably use this first format, this initializer list, if you know exactly what's going into your array. You'd probably use this second format if either you're getting user input, or you're going to use a loop to fill in your array, or you don't know what the values are going to be until your program runs or something like that. If I were to go back and do this, I'd probably use an initializer list like we did for movie titles, but I wanted to give you some extra experience using it. Now, what else can we do now that we have these this movie ratings and this movie titles? Well, we could go ahead and, for example, let's print out the zeroth movie's title, and rating. So remember, the way that you access an individual element is you say the name of the array first. So maybe I'll say something like movie titles sub 0. That would be the 0th element, JAWS, hopefully. We'll find out soon. And then I can say what received a, and then I can similarly get movie ratings sub 0. I don't know, you could tack on score too if you wanted to. I'll just leave it like that. Now, people goof often because they forget their plus signs or they forget the quotation marks on both sides of received a. They're here because I want to exactly see received a. JAWS received a 98. And if you wanted to keep going, you could go ahead and, copy it, paste it, and then you could do, 1, and so on, and so on, and so on, and so on. Spaceballs received a 59. And you could keep going and do the rest of them. Now, not to preview too much of what we're going to be looking at tomorrow, but when I'm looking through the elements in an array, I know I always start at what number for the index? 0. And I know that I'm going to count up to, what's the last number? The length minus 1, and I know I'm going to be counting by ones. If I know where I'm starting, 0, I know what I'm counting up to, the length minus 1, and I know to count by ones, I wonder if there's a certain loop I could use to look through arrays. Something to think about, something to consider there. If you don't know where I'm going with that, that's okay. We're going to look at it together tomorrow. And we could keep going with all that stuff. Let's see here. What else could we do? Why don't we take a little break from our movie array and let's navigate... Oh, who's in this movie? Ryan Gosling, James Garner, Rachel McAdams. Sorry, I haven't seen it before. I was just curious what's going on with this movie. Okay, let's go ahead and take a little break from our what we've created here, and let's click on the CS1 page I linked to today, and let's just make sure we understand where we're going with all this stuff. So I put up this link for today that says array creation and array access. Got it, perfect. Wait, let me make sure. Yep, that's right. See ya. It says, to access the items in an array, we use an indexed array variable, which is the array name and the index inside of a square bracket. We've just done that. We just took notes on it. We're good there. Remember that an index is a number that indicates the position of an item in a list starting at 0. This stuff doesn't mean anything to us, so I'm going to scroll down and keep going here. It says an index variable like array name sub-index can be used anywhere a regular variable can be used. For example, to assign a new value or to get a value from the array like below. I think we just kind of took notes on something similar to that. We assigned a rating. We also printed out some of those ratings. It says the first value in an array is stored at index 0, and the index of the last value is the length of the array minus 1. Like, tell me something we don't know. We're brainiacs. We know all this stuff, right? Use array name subindex to access or modify array items. Okay. This question says, fill in the blank with code to access the cars array. So we are supposed to store inside of string V the value Volvo. Now don't just type in Volvo. Get Volvo from the cars array. Go ahead and type in your answer. Try to type in some code that will store inside of V the value Volvo from array cars. I'll give you guys, I don't know, a couple seconds here. Anybody feeling brave? Cordelia, yeah. This guy? Yeah. Very good. And I don't need a semicolon because I guess they included the semicolon. How'd I do? Check me. Oh, let's go. And you can either say, you know, if you're reading off the code exactly, you could say cars, left square bracket 1, right square bracket, or if you're talking to your programming friends, of which you have many, you could just say cars sub 1. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Next question says, fill in the blank with code to access the cars array. Note the semicolon is provided. Oh, that's good to know for you after the box. It says string cars, Honda, Volvo, BMW. Set the first item of the cars array to be Toyota instead of Honda. Go ahead and type in your answer. We want to change Honda to Toyota, essentially. Now, when it says first item, do we think it's talking about the actual first item, or do you think it's talking about the element at index 1? Do you know what I mean? The semantics here. First item? To me, that means the 0th element. Is that the correct answer? Is that they're looking for the 0th one? Okay. Okay. Cool. Gravy. All right. So we can, not only can you access an individual element, like in this case they took an element and stored it somewhere, you can also go ahead and change an individual element. Now, unfortunately, you can't do something this simply like this with strings in Java, but if you ever deal with Python, you can actually change individual characters and manipulate them, kind of like we did here. But we're not in Python, so who cares? It says, if you want to keep track of the 5 highest scores in a game and the names of the people with those scores, you could use 2 parallel arrays. Well, we kind of actually did what's called a parallel array. Basically, the 0th element in each array corresponds to each other. Then the 1th element in each array corresponds to each other. The 2th element in each array corresponds to each other, and so on, and so on, and so on. Basically, the ith element in one array corresponds to the ith element in another array. Those are called parallel arrays, and they have the same length as well. So here we did movie titles and the ratings. You could do high scores and the player's name. When you're looking at like a Hall of Fame number, ranking list, something like that, it's kind of similar as well. There's all kinds of stuff that you can use parallel arrays for. Okay, excuse me. One array could keep track of the scores and the other the names. So maybe we should put on our note sheet somewhere exactly what a parallel array is, because I don't think I have it anywhere on here, and that's bad. So let's just say what a parallel array is somewhere here. Right here looks good. Right about here looks good. I've got some room down here. Let's see. This is a good spot. Parallel arrays. Hopefully I'm spelling that right. As a math teacher. Parallel arrays. 2 arrays with the same length where elements at corresponding indices are related to one another. Or in other words, the 0th element in one array is related to the 0th element in the other array. The 0th element in our movie titles array is related to the 0th element in the movie ratings array. The 1th element in movie titles is related to the 1th element in movie ratings, and so on and so forth. Now, Java does not know that these 2 arrays are related to each other. Really, only you know that the 2 arrays are parallel and related to each other. And so you have to make the designation that they're the same length when you create them, as we did with movie titles and movie ratings. And you also have to put in the data in the correct order. It's like if I go into my grade book and I put somebody's score in the wrong spot, then their score is not corresponding to what they actually got. It's kind of the same thing here. I need to make sure the data is in the correct order if I'm going to make parallel arrays. What's the use of having parallel arrays? Well, you kind of just saw it down here when we were printing out the elements. I can say the 0th element of movie titles relates to the 0th element of movie ratings, the 1th and the 1th. Or we could put it into a big for loop and look at all of the elements in each one of the arrays, because we're guaranteed that they're the same length and the ith element in each one corresponds to one another. So you can do something like that there. Let's keep reading. Sorry, I kind of got off on a diatribe. It says down below, try out the following code which has 2 parallel arrays, high scores and names. Can you print out Mateo's score? Can you change Sophia's score to 97 using an assignment statement in the code? Can you change the arrays so that they have 6 elements and add your name and score to print them out? I think you guys can do all 3 of those things. Why don't you go ahead and do all 3 of those things? I don't know. How long should I give you to do that? 2 minutes? Let's try 2 and we'll check in. Go ahead. Take 2 minutes here. Here. What am I supposed to do? We are... Let me make sure I got this recording. Okay, we're good. So, first thing, print out Mateo's score. Okay, Mateo was 0, 1, 2, 3. So maybe I'll do... system.out.println name sub, what was he, 0, 1, 2, 3, name sub 3 plus has a score of, and then I'll do high scores sub 3, something like that, because these are parallel arrays. So let's see here, do I get Mateo's score? Mateo has a score of 88. Nice job, Mateo. Can you change Sophia's score to 97 using an assignment operator? So I'm not just going to change Sophia's score inside of here. It says use the assignment operator, so I might do something like high scores. Let's see, Sophia is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so I'd have to say high scores sub 4 equals a 97. Wow, she must have gotten some extra credit or something. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. She was at 68, now she's at 97. Incredible. And then it says, can you change the arrays so that they have 6 elements? Now, because arrays, yesterday we wrote down they are fixed in size, I can't go ahead and change them with the assignment operator to add a 6th element. If you don't know what I mean, I can't just say something like high scores sub 6 equals something. Here, I can show you. If I try to do that, I get this error. It says array index out of bounds exception. It says you're trying to use index 6 when it doesn't even exist or something like that. I could even try to do index 5. And I'm still going to get an index out of bounds exception because there's nothing at index 5. The array's not that big. So instead of doing something like that, I would have to go back to the initializer list and actually add another element in here for me. So something like that. And then I could go ahead and print myself out if I wanted to. Name sub 5 plus has a score of high scores sub 5. Something like that. Then I should be able to see eCalb has a score of 100. If you ever try to access an element of an array, either you're trying to change it or you're trying to print it out, and that element does not exist, you are going to get an index out of bounds exception, as you saw. Just one more time to see what that error looks like. If I change this to 6 and I go ahead and try to run it, you'll see that I get an error. Exception thread, there's nothing at index 6, because if the length is 6, the index of the last element is 5, so I end up with an issue in that case. If you ever try to access an element that does not exist, you will get this error that I think is very descriptive. It tells you what line the error is on, it tells you what the error is, array index out of bounds exception, it tells you what index the error was thrown for, and what the actual size of the array is that you were trying to access. So a very, very informative error if you ever make that mistake. Maybe we should write that down and take a break. How's that sound? Okay. So I'm going to write one more note on here about an array index out of bounds exception. Array, oh Judas, let me just try that again. Array index out of bounds. Technically it says exception on the end, but that's okay. Error that occurs when trying to access an index that doesn't exist. Okay, I think now that we've got that written down, it's a wonderful time to maybe take our 2-minute break here, stretch your legs, get a drink of water, all that good stuff. It's about 9:46. Let's be back here at 9:48. Even if you're just going to stay here and look at your phone, you probably want to stand up and stretch your legs and get the blood flowing and all that stuff. So go ahead and take a minute, and we'll resume when you get back. I realized I already had written down below here, out of bounds. That's kind of what we just talked about. That's the error, the array index out of bounds that pops up. So my mistake, that is on your note sheet. Some other things, you can use array values to do arithmetic stuff. So for example, if we want to find an average, you can add up elements and then divide them. I thought that might have been fun. We can figure out the average of the movies you guys listed. So let's go ahead and write a code segment here to calculate and print out the average of the average rating of the movies listed. Calculate and print out the average rating of the movies listed. So if you remember the way to calculate an average, you add up all of the stuff and then you divide it by the number, the quantity of stuff. So I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. We have to add them all together. So I'll do that whole quantity, movie ratings sub 0 plus movie ratings sub 1. I know it's tiresome, but it's good practice. Movie ratings sub 3 plus movie ratings sub 4. All of that stuff. I'll zoom out a little bit so we can see the whole thing here. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. All 5 of them added together. I've got parentheses on either side because I want to add them all up first, and then I want to divide. Should I divide by 5 or 5.0? I think I need to divide by 5.0 because all these movie ratings are int. And if I divide by another int, I'm going to get back an int. So I'm going to divide by 5.0 instead so I can actually get the actual average. And then maybe I can print it out. The average rating is ABG. I think you folks chose a stellar slate of movies. Even though Spaceballs and The Notebook kind of had underperforming scores, I don't think that's on you guys. 79.8. That's pretty good. So, I mean, I'd take it. That's certified fresh, really. 79.8 average certified fresh. That's higher than the overall rating of the Shrek movies. How do I know? Last trimester when we did this activity, of course, all of the movies were Shrek, Shrek 2, Shrek 3, Shrek Forever After. Do all the Danny DeVito movies? Yeah, okay. Maybe on your own time. So just like any other variable, you can use these values in calculations. You can reassign it. If you think The Notebook was criminally underrated, you could do movie rating sub 4 times equals 2 if you wanted to double it. You can do all kinds of stuff. So down here I said you can use array values in arithmetic like we just did finding the average. This is how we found the average. We added up all 5 of the movie ratings, and then we divided by the number of movies. You could do something like that. You could go ahead and reassign array values using your compound operators. So you could do a plus plus if it's an integer or a double. You could do a times equals if you want to have it double or something like that. You could do divide equals, plus equals, minus equals. Just like any other variable, the only difference is you have square brackets now because you're indicating which indexed element in the array are you talking about. Finding the length we talked about mostly yesterday, but it's not a bad idea to just maybe have circled on your notes here. To find the length of an array, you do the name of the array dot length. It just gives you the number of elements an array has. Now, that is different than the index of the last element. So if our array has 5 elements, it's going to print out the length is 5, but the index of the last one will be at 4. So if you don't believe me, let's maybe just do something like that on the length really quick. Print out the length and the last movie in the array. How about that? So if I wanted to print out the length of movie titles, I could do something like, I'll zoom back in here. I could do something like system.println movie titles.length. No parentheses at the very end. That'll tell me the number of movies. It says there's 5 of them. If I want to print out the last movie in the array, I would have to do something like system.out.println movie titles sub movie titles dot length -1. And so for the index numbers, you can even do arithmetic and algebra and all kinds of stuff. If you want to use variables to discuss the indices, you can do something like that. So movie titles dot length -1, that'll calculate it out as an index and then use that index to determine the last movie in the array. So this will basically calculate movie titles dot length first, which is 5. 5 minus 1 is 4. So it'll do movie titles sub 4, which is the notebook in ours here. And you can do all kinds of stuff. What if I wanted to find the middle element in my array? I could do movie titles sub movie titles dot length divided by 2. I could do something like that. You know, if you want to get really buck wild, let's do something interesting here. Let's do a mystery. I want you to write the code without running the code for a second. This is going to be dangerous here, but let's write it without running it for a second. Let's do movie ratings sub movie ratings sub 0 divided by movie ratings sub 1 sub. Okay, don't run it. I just want you to look at it for a second and let's think about it. All right, remember square brackets are grouping symbols. So order of precedence means we do the stuff inside the grouping symbols first. My innermost level of grouping symbols are these guys here. So I'll figure out what movie rating sub 0 is. Movie rating sub 0 is 98. So I would do 98 divided by movie rating sub 1 is 59. What is 98 divided by 59 going to evaluate to? 1. And then it's going, if you don't understand why it's 1, remember this is integer division. 59 goes into 98 one time. So then it will print out movie rating sub 1, which should be 59. Now, would you ever practically do anything like that? Probably not. But you could. You could. And so, again, the square brackets are just like grouping symbols. You do stuff inside the grouping symbols first, evaluate it. Be careful about integer division and stuff like that. We have an assignment tonight that's kind of similar to that there. All right. There was one more fun activity that I thought I saw on the website here. Let's see, we already talked about this. Using an array index outside of 0 to length -1 will result in an array index out of bounds exception. We already talked about that. Down below they have this activity. It says, here's a fun string array of image file names. The following code displays an online image using an HTML tag. Note that this just works in the active code window, which interprets HTML. In other Java IDs you would need to use, okay, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. Run the code and see that it displays images sub 0, which is cow.jpg. So What I see is an array of images, different JPEGs, cow.jpg, kitten.jpg, puppy.jpg, pig.jpg, reindeer.jpg, and then it looks like they have an index that's currently at 0. And then they print out some image from that images array. So if you run it right now, you should see a cow. I guess that's a cow. Not any type of cow I've ever seen. Maybe a mountain cow. And then you can change this index to anything. It looks like there's 5 elements, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. You could change this to number 1. And then you could see the... Oh. You could change the number to index 2 to see the puppy. What do you guys think? Good looking dog or... Same. Honestly, same. Index 3 looks like it's going to correspond to pig.jpg. Let's see, pig. Oh my gosh. Don't you guys just love unlikely animal friend pairings? There's nothing like it in the world. And then, let's see, number 4 is supposed to be reindeer.jpg. It's not a reindeer, that's a dog. Don't be fooled, that's clearly a dog. That's clearly a dog. It says here that this stuff interprets HTML for whatever reason. Most of our programs don't, but I just thought that was an interesting little tiny activity. Okay, what did we look at today? Well, yesterday we looked at how to create arrays. And arrays, remember, are a collection of data, all of the same type that is fixed in size. Once you make your list of data, your array of data, you cannot make that list bigger or smaller. It's stuck in that size. And the nice thing about arrays is instead of making 100 different variables like you've done in the past, you can make one variable and store all related elements inside of it using indices. So that's the first thing we did yesterday, was creating an array. There's 2 main ways to create an array. The first one we looked at is when you know the type and you know the number of elements, but maybe you're not sure what's going to go in it. You do it in this way, number 1. The second way we looked at is if you know exactly what's going to go into it, you use what's called an initializer list with curly braces, and you can put the elements directly in there. So that's from yesterday. Today we looked at how do you actually access individual elements of an array. Well, essentially you just say the array name, square brackets, and then an index number. And that behaves exactly like a variable. Whether you want to use it in a calculation, whether you want to print it out, whether you want to change it using the equal sign, essentially you can access individual elements in an array, all using the same array name, but just different index numbers. Keep in mind that the index numbers range from 0 to the length minus 1. And if you go anywhere less than 0 or anywhere more than the length minus 1, you're going to get that index out of bounds exception. And then lastly, you can find the length of an array using the array name .length, which will be very important for us going forward tomorrow, because tomorrow we're going to look at how we can use loops to actually process these arrays. Any questions on anything from today? Are we kind of getting an idea about how arrays might help us manage the complexity of our programs when you have a lot of data? Instead of having many variables, you can just have one where there's individual indices? Okay. We're done a little early today, which is good because there's an assignment, and that gives you some time to work on the assignment. Which is nice. The assignment coming around, if you could take one and pass it around, is essentially a worksheet, 2 different worksheets on arrays and their indices. Why is there a problem accessing it? Why is there a problem looking at it? Please let me look at it. The document kind of looks like this here, and essentially you might be printing out the length, you might be printing out an individual element. On both of these sheets, the array is created up at the top. So if you're looking for what's the vals array, it's created up at the top there with all of its elements. What I would do if I were you is I would write down the indices before I get started, right up above, and I think that will help you be more productive instead of having to recount the index numbers every time. Also, if you do that, then you can see what the length of the array is. So in this case, the length of the array would be 11, for example, here, because it contains 11 elements. And you're just evaluating those different lines of output. Keep in mind the square brackets are like grouping symbols. Anything you do inside the grouping symbols, do that first. And remember, watch out for integer division and stuff like that. There are two sides to it, but you have a good amount of time to get started. If you have a question, you can come ask me in the next couple minutes here. And that's your assignment for tonight. Sound good?